Marcus Davis had become something more than human, and something less. The military called him their greatest success story. They'd taken a regular soldier and turned him into a weapon that could end battles before they even started. Tiny computers had been wired directly into his brain and nervous system, making him react faster than any normal person ever could. When danger appeared, his body would move on its own, destroying the threat before Marcus even knew what was happening. He'd fought in 3 different wars across the galaxy. Humans were still new to the whole space travel thing, still proving themselves to alien races that had been flying between stars for thousands of years. And Marcus was one of the reasons other species had learned to respect humanity, or at least fear them. 27 different assassins had tried to kill him over the years. Professional killers from a dozen different alien worlds, each one supposedly the best at what they did. Marcus had killed them all without breaking a sweat. Some he'd taken down before they even got close. Others had managed to get within striking distance, but his augmented reflexes always won out in the end. His body would twist and strike like a snake, ending fights in seconds. The thing was, Marcus didn't really feel like himself anymore. When the fighting started, it was like watching someone else control his body. The augmentations would take over, and he'd just be along for the ride. He'd see his hands moving, feel his muscles working, but it wasn't really him making those choices. The computers in his head were running the show. The scientists who designed the augmentations had tested everything they could think of. They'd run thousands of simulations, checked every line of code, made sure the system was perfect, and it was perfect mostly. But buried deep in all that programming was something they hadn't expected, a flaw that seemed so unlikely to matter that they'd just noted it down and moved on. The augmentations were connected to every part of Marcus's brain, including the parts that handled emotions and perception. And the scientists discovered that when Marcus experienced real beauty, genuine aesthetic appreciation, his combat systems would shut down completely, just crash like an old computer. All his super-fast reflexes, all his tactical displays, all his threat analysis, everything would just stop working. But the military didn't care about this flaw. When would a soldier ever stop to look at something beautiful in the middle of a firefight? When would Marcus be admiring a sunset while enemies were shooting at him? It seemed ridiculous. So they cleared him for active duty and sent him out into the galaxy to fight humanity's battles. For 8 years, the flaw never mattered. Marcus went from one combat zone to another, always moving, always fighting. War zones weren't beautiful places. They were ugly and brutal, and covered in blood and smoke. Nothing there triggered that hidden weakness in his programming. Then his last mission ended, and the military gave him a new assignment. They sent him to Frontier Station 7, a research outpost way out on the edge of human-controlled space. It was supposed to be a quiet posting, a chance to rest before the next war started. The station studied alien planets and their ecosystems, trying to figure out which worlds humans might be able to colonize someday. Marcus arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, station time. The place was smaller than he'd expected. Just a few thousand people living in a collection of connected modules floating in orbit around a gas giant. Most of the residents were scientists and support staff. No soldiers except for a handful of security personnel, who looked bored out of their minds. He was walking through the main habitat ring, heading toward his assigned quarters, when he saw her. Dr. Emily Brooks was standing in front of a large observation window, looking out at the planet below. She had a data pad in her hands, making notes about something, but she kept glancing up at the view. The gas giant was massive and beautiful, with swirling storms of purple and gold cutting through its atmosphere. But Marcus wasn't looking at the planet. Emily had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the standard research station jumpsuit, nothing fancy. She was focused on her work, completely unaware that anyone was watching her, and she was absolutely beautiful. The moment Marcus saw her, every system in his body crashed. His tactical display vanished. The constant stream of threat assessments that normally ran in the background of his vision just disappeared. His augmented reflexes went offline. The subtle enhancements to his hearing and vision shut down. Even his elevated heart rate and optimized breathing patterns dropped back to normal human levels. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus was completely, totally ordinary. Just a man standing in a corridor, staring at a woman he'd never met before. He actually stumbled, his body suddenly feeling strange without all the artificial improvements running in the background. It was like he'd been wearing a heavy suit of armor for years, and someone had just cut it all away. He felt light and clumsy at the same time. Emily must have heard him stumble, because she turned around when she saw him. She smiled politely, the kind of smile you give to strangers in public spaces. "You okay?" she asked. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice came out rough. He'd gotten used to the augmentations managing even his vocal cords for optimal communication. Now, he had to do it himself. Yeah, he managed, just getting used to the station gravity. It was a lie. The station's gravity was standard Earth normal, same as every human habitat. But he couldn't exactly tell her the truth. She nodded, accepting the explanation, and went back to her work. Marcus forced himself to keep walking, heading down the corridor toward his quarters. But his mind was racing, trying to figure out what had just happened. The augmentations had failed before, briefly, in controlled tests back on Earth, when the scientists showed him certain pieces of art or played specific music. His systems would flicker offline for a few seconds. But that had been in a lab, under carefully managed conditions, and it had never been this complete, this total. Something about Emily Brooks had hit his augmentations harder than anything the scientists had ever tested, and Marcus had absolutely no idea why. He made it to his quarters and locked the door behind him. Then he sat on the edge of his bunk and tried to restart his combat systems manually. There were emergency override codes he could use, ways to force the augmentations to reboot even when they crashed. Nothing worked. The systems were completely offline, refusing to respond to any of his commands. Marcus sat there for 3 hours, trying everything he could think of. Finally, around midnight, the augmentations slowly started coming back online on their own. His tactical display flickered into view. His reflexes sharpened. All his enhanced senses gradually returned. He felt relieved and disappointed at the same time. Relieved because being without the augmentations felt dangerously vulnerable, like walking around naked. But disappointed because for those few hours, he'd felt human again in a way he'd almost forgotten. The next morning, Marcus told himself he'd just avoid Emily Brooks. The station was small, but not that small. He could arrange a schedule to minimize any chance of running into her. Problem solved. But the universe, Marcus was about to learn, had other plans, and they involved a lot of people trying to kill Dr. Emily Brooks. Marcus Davis learned about the threat to Emily's life during a routine security briefing 3 days after arriving at the station. The security chief, a tired-looking man named Peterson, pulled Marcus aside after the morning meeting. "We got a situation," Peterson said, keeping his voice low. "One of our researchers has attracted some unwanted attention. Dr. Emily Brooks, the biologist." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Of course it was her. Of course the universe would throw this at him. Peterson explained the situation. Emily had been studying the ecosystem on one of the nearby planets, a world called Kepler 442. It was supposed to be just routine research, cataloging plant and animal life, checking if the planet might be suitable for human colonization someday. But Emily had found something unexpected in the soil samples. There were rare minerals down there, incredibly valuable ones that were used in faster-than-light engines, the kind of minerals that could make someone rich beyond imagination, and someone was already mining them illegally. The Kovac Syndicate was one of the largest criminal organizations in this sector of space. They'd set up hidden mining operations on Kepler 42 years ago, long before humans had even discovered the planet. They were pulling out billions of credits worth of minerals and selling them on the black market. Emily's research had accidentally exposed their entire operation. She documented the mining equipment, the environmental damage, everything, and she'd sent her findings back to Earth, to the proper authorities. The Kovac Syndicate had put a price on her head, a big one, and they'd hired professionals to collect. "We need someone who can keep her alive," Peterson said. "Your file says you're the best combat operator in the human military. Will you take the job?" Marcus should have said no. He should have explained that he was literally the worst possible choice for this assignment. But he looked at Peterson's tired face and thought about Emily standing at that observation window, completely unaware that people were planning to kill her. "I'll do it," Marcus heard himself say. Peterson looked relieved. "Good. Brief her this afternoon. Stay close. The Syndicate's people could arrive any day now." Marcus spent the next few hours trying to figure out how to make this work. He couldn't tell anyone about his problem with the augmentations. It was classified information, first of all, but more than that, it was embarrassing. How could he explain that the woman he was supposed to protect was the only person in the galaxy who could accidentally shut down all his combat systems? He decided he'd just have to keep some distance. Stay far enough away that his systems wouldn't crash, but close enough to respond if trouble started. It wasn't a great plan, but it was all he had. Emily took the news about the death threats better than Marcus expected. She was calm, almost analytical about it. "How long until they get here?" she asked. "Could be days, could be hours." Marcus said, "We don't know." She nodded slowly, processing the information. "And you're going to be my bodyguard?" "Yes." "Okay, then." She went back to her research like nothing had changed. Marcus tried to maintain his distance, staying 10 or 15 feet away from her at all times. It mostly worked. His augmentations would flicker sometimes when she laughed or smiled, but they didn't completely crash as long as he kept that buffer zone. The attack came 4 days later, in the station's main marketplace. The marketplace was a large open area where station residents could buy food, supplies, and various goods from Earth and other human colonies. It was always crowded, especially during the evening hours when people finished their work shifts. Emily had wanted to pick up some supplies for her lab, and Marcus had reluctantly agreed to accompany her. He was maintaining his usual distance, about 12 feet back, scanning the crowd out of habit. His augmented vision picked out faces, analyzed body language, tracked movement patterns. Everything seemed normal, just tired researchers buying groceries and talking with friends. Then his threat detection system lit up. Someone on the upper level, near the east entrance, carrying something long and cylindrical. The profile matched a Krell plasma rifle. Marcus's combat systems engaged instantly. Time seemed to slow down as his augmentations kicked into high gear. He could see the assassin clearly now, a Krell warrior with the distinctive ridge crest of a professional killer. The alien was raising the rifle, aiming down into the crowd, aiming at Emily. Marcus started moving, his augmented muscles propelling him forward faster than any normal human could manage. He had maybe 2 seconds before the Krell fired. Plenty of time. Then Emily turned around, looking for him in the crowd. She spotted him and smiled, that same warm smile from their first meeting. Every system in Marcus's body crashed instantly. His tactical display vanished. His enhanced reflexes died. Time stopped slowing down and snapped back to normal speed. Suddenly, he was just a regular man, running through a crowded marketplace, trying to reach a woman who was about to be killed. The Krell assassin fired. Marcus screamed Emily's name and dove forward. No computer-assisted predictions to guide him. No optimized muscle control. Just desperate instinct and pure terror. He hit Emily at full speed, tackling her to ground as the plasma bolt sizzled through the air where her head had been a split second earlier. The shot hit a fruit stand behind them, vaporizing a crate of imported apples in a flash of superheated steam. People started screaming. The crowd scattered in every direction. Marcus rolled with Emily, trying to put his body between her and the shooter. His mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do without any of his augmentations to help him. Station security arrived within seconds, drawn by the sound of the plasma discharge. They filled the marketplace, weapons drawn, looking for the threat. But the Krell assassin was already gone, vanished into the chaos. Marcus helped Emily to her feet. She was shaking, her eyes wide with shock. "What just happened?" "Someone tried to kill you," Marcus said. His voice was steadier than he felt. Security Chief Peterson pushed through the crowd, looking furious. "Everyone okay?" "We're fine," Marcus said. "Krell assassin. Upper East entrance. They're gone now." Peterson started barking orders to a security team, sending them to search the station. But Marcus knew they wouldn't find anything. Professional killers didn't stick around after a failed attempt. Emily was staring at him with an odd expression. "You were slow," she said quietly. "What?" "You were slow. I've read your file. You're supposed to be faster than that. But you were just running like a normal person." Marcus felt his heart sink. Of course she'd noticed. Emily was a scientist. She observed things for a living. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried. "Yes, you do." Emily's shock was wearing off, replaced by scientific curiosity. "Something happened. Your augmentations failed, didn't they?" Marcus opened his mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. He'd spent 8 years lying to people, hiding weaknesses, pretending to be an unstoppable machine. But looking at Emily's face, he couldn't do it anymore. "We need to talk," he finally said. "Somewhere private." They went back to Emily's quarters. Marcus checked the room for listening devices out of habit, then sat down and told her everything about the augmentations, about how they worked, about the flaw that made them crash when he experienced real beauty, about how she was the only person who'd ever triggered that flaw so completely. Emily listened without interrupting, her scientific mind clearly working through the implications. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So you can't fight when I'm around," she said finally. "Not effectively, no. But people are trying to kill me." "Yes. And you're supposed to protect me." That was the idea. Emily started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but genuine amusement at the absurdity of the situation. "This is ridiculous. The universe's greatest human warrior, and he's useless around the one person he's supposed to guard." Marcus couldn't help but smile. "Pretty much, yeah." Emily's laughter faded, and she looked at him with that analytical expression again, like he was a particularly interesting research specimen. "Your file says you have a genius-level tactical mind. Strategic planning, pattern recognition, all of that. The augmentations help with that too. But the core intelligence is yours, right? The computers just enhance it." Marcus nodded slowly, not sure where she was going with this. Emily stood up and started pacing, the way she probably did when working through a difficult research problem. "Okay, so we have a situation. I need protection. You can't fight near me, but you can think." She turned to face him. "So we'll have to be smarter than your programming." Emily approached Marcus's problem the same way she approached everything else in her life, like a scientific experiment that needed testing and data collection. The morning after the marketplace attack, she showed up at his quarters with a notebook and a determined expression. "We're going to figure out exactly what triggers your system failures," she announced. "Controlled environment, proper methodology, just like any other research project." Marcus wanted to argue, but he could see the logic in it. If they were going to work together, they needed to understand the limitations. So he agreed. They started simple. Emily stood across the room, about 20 feet away. Marcus's augmentations ran perfectly. All systems normal. She took one step closer. Still fine. Another step. Still good. At 15 feet, his tactical display started to flicker slightly. At 12 feet, his threat detection began showing minor errors. At 10 feet, everything crashed completely, just like before. Emily made notes. "Okay, so there's a distance threshold. What if I'm behind you?" They tested that next. Emily walked up behind him while Marcus faced the wall. His system started failing at the same distance, even though he couldn't see her. It wasn't just visual then. "What if you cover your ears?" Emily suggested. Marcus tried that, blocking out the sound of her footsteps, her breathing. The augmentations still crashed when she got within 10 feet. "Interesting," Emily murmured, scribbling more notes. "It's not any single sense. It's something deeper. Maybe your brain just knows I'm there." They spent 3 days testing different scenarios. Emily wore different clothes to see if that mattered. It didn't. She tried not talking, not moving, even hiding behind furniture. None of it helped. Whenever she was within that 10-foot bubble, Marcus's combat systems went completely offline. But on the 4th day, Emily discovered something the military scientists had completely missed. She was standing close to Marcus, within the failure zone, asking him questions about his tactical training, trying to understand how the augmentations normally worked. Marcus was explaining how his threat assessment system would analyze crowds, looking for weapons and suspicious behavior patterns. When I'm in a marketplace like yesterday, he said, I can track about 40 different people simultaneously. The system flags anyone carrying weapons, anyone moving with military training, anyone watching me instead of going about their business. It creates this whole threat map in my vision, color-coded by danger level. Emily was quiet for a moment, but yesterday in the marketplace, you saw the Krell sniper before your systems crashed. How? Marcus thought about it. I just noticed him, recognized the weapon profile, saw how he was positioning himself. Without the augmentations? Yeah, I've been a soldier for 12 years. I had training before the augmentations. Emily grabbed her notebook and started writing furiously. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Describe the security vulnerabilities in this room. Right now, while I'm standing here and your systems are offline. Marcus looked around the room, confused by the request. But he started talking. Door opens inward, so anyone breaching with a momentum advantage. No hard cover, just furniture. Window is reinforced but could be cut with plasma torch. Air vent is large enough for a small assassin to crawl through. Emergency intercom on the wall. Could be compromised to track our location. He stopped because Emily was staring at him with wide eyes. What? He asked. Keep going. Tell me how you defend against an attack here. Marcus shrugged and continued. Barricade the door with a desk. It's heavy enough to slow entry. Position near the window. Angles of fire to cover both the door and air vent. Keep the intercom offline. Use the bathroom as a fallback position. Only one entry point. Set up tripwires using electrical cables from the equipment. Place the chair where someone entering would. Stop, Emily interrupted. She was smiling now, that excited smile researchers get when they discover something new. Marcus, do you realize what you just did? Describe basic defensive tactics. In about 30 seconds, you create a complete security analysis and defensive plan that would take most people 10 minutes to work out. And you did it while your combat augmentations were completely offline. Marcus frowned. So, Emily sat down, her mind clearly racing. The military scientists thought your augmentations just failed when you experienced beauty, like a computer crashing. But that's not what's happening at all. The processing power isn't disappearing. It's redirecting. She explained her theory. The augmentations were connected to every part of Marcus's brain. When his combat systems shut down, all that incredible processing power had to go somewhere, and it was flooding into his other cognitive functions. Strategic thinking, pattern recognition, abstract analysis. You can't fight near me, Emily said, but you can think better than you ever could before. Your brain becomes a tactical supercomputer. They tested this theory over the next week. Emily would stand close to Marcus, and he'd work through complex tactical problems, planning security routes, analyzing threat scenarios, designing defensive strategies. And she was right. He was incredibly good at it when she was nearby. Ideas came faster. Connections formed instantly. He could see patterns and possibilities that normally took hours of analysis. It was like the universe was balancing things out. Take away his ability to fight. Give him the ability to plan at a genius level. Emily proposed a new strategy. We work together. I stay close when you're planning. You figure out how to handle the threats. Predict what the assassins will do. Design countermeasures. Then, when it's time for actual fighting, I pull back. You handle the violence with your combat systems running. I'll stay on comlink. Help you think through it in real time. Marcus was skeptical. That's a lot of coordination. We're both smart people. We can make it work. The second assassination attempt came 3 days later. 2 Krell warriors this time, trying to ambush Emily on her way to the research labs. But Marcus had spent the morning with Emily, planning out every possible attack scenario. He predicted this exact approach. 2-person team, early morning, low traffic corridor. When it happened, Emily immediately stepped back, pressing herself against the wall and getting out of Marcus's 10-foot bubble. His augmentations came online instantly. The fight lasted 8 seconds. Both Krell went down hard. Emily had watched from a safe distance, her heart pounding. When it was over, Marcus helped her step over the unconscious bodies. "Told you it would work," he said. The third attempt was a poison attack. Someone tried to contaminate Emily's coffee with a slow-acting toxin. But Marcus had planned for this too, had Emily switch to sealed beverage containers and randomly vary her routine. They caught the would-be poisoner in the act. The fourth attempt involved a disguised maintenance worker trying to sabotage Emily's lab equipment to cause an explosion. Marcus had predicted that too. They'd move her critical research to a secure backup location days earlier. Each time, they got better at working together. Emily learned to read Marcus's tactical needs, to know when to stay close and when to give him space. Marcus learned to trust his planning abilities, to use those moments with Emily to think through every possibility. But the Kovac Syndicate was learning too. They started sending better killers. More of them, better equipped. The attacks escalated from individual assassins to coordinated teams. The fifth attempt involved 4 attackers hitting from multiple directions simultaneously. Marcus fought for 3 straight minutes, the longest engagement since this all started. He took down all 4, but barely. Ended up with a plasma burn on his shoulder and cracked ribs. Emily patched him up in her quarters, her hands shaking slightly as she applied medical gel to the burn. "They're not going to stop, are they?" "No," Marcus admitted. "You expose a multi-billion credit operation. They'll keep coming until you're dead or they're destroyed. So, what do we do?" Marcus looked at her and felt something shift in his chest. For 8 years, he'd been fighting because it was his job, because the military pointed him at enemies and he destroyed them. The augmentations made it easy, made it almost automatic. He'd never really thought about why he was fighting. But now, sitting in Emily's quarters with broken ribs and burns covering his shoulder, Marcus realized something that terrified him more than any assassin ever could. He wasn't fighting because of his programming anymore. The augmentations were just tools. He was fighting because he'd chosen to. Because somewhere in the past few weeks, Emily Brooks had become the most important thing in his life. He was fighting to protect her, not because someone ordered him to, not because it was his duty, but because the thought of anything happening to her made his chest tight and his hands shake. Humanity's deadliest weapon had found something worth protecting that went beyond duty, beyond orders, beyond programming. He'd found someone he cared about, and that changed everything. The alert siren started screaming at 2 a.m, station time. Marcus was instantly awake, his augmentations already analyzing the threat before his eyes fully opened. The emergency broadcast was playing on every speaker in the station. Biological contamination detected in sectors 4 through 9. All personnel must shelter in place immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Emergency lockdown protocols are now active. Marcus's tactical display showed the station map. Heavy blast doors were slamming shut throughout the facility, sealing off entire sections. The contamination zone supposedly covered half the station, including the residential areas. Something felt wrong about this. The timing was too convenient. Marcus grabbed his comm and called, "Emily, where are you?" "My quarters." "What's happening?" "They're saying there's some kind of biological leak." "Stay there. Lock your door." "I'm coming to you." Marcus ran to the corridors, his augmented speed carrying him past confused and frightened station residents. His threat detection was going crazy, flagging heat signatures all over the station. Too many armed individuals moving with military precision. This wasn't a contamination event. This was an attack. He reached Emily's quarters just as she was sealing the door. "It's not real," he told her. "The contamination. It's fake. They're using it as cover to trap us." Emily's face went pale. "The Syndicate?" "Has to be. They've studied our patterns. They know we work together. They know about my..." He gestured vaguely at his head. "They engineered this whole scenario to force me to stay with you, trap us in close quarters." As if to confirm his words, the lights in the corridor flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. Marcus's augmented vision compensated instantly, but he could see the fear in Emily's eyes. "How many?" she asked. Marcus checked his tactical display. "At least 20 hostiles." Krell mostly. Some Draxian mercenaries. They're moving through the station in coordinated teams, searching room by room. He paused. They're herding everyone toward the central habitat ring. We're being boxed in. Emily looked around her small quarters. We can't stay here. They'll find us eventually. I know, but out there... Marcus stopped, the reality of the situation hitting him. Out there, I'll have to stay close to you. The corridors are narrow. I won't be able to maintain distance. My augmentations will be offline the whole time. They both understood what that meant. Marcus would be fighting without any of his enhancements. Just a regular soldier against alien warriors who were faster, stronger, and equipped with military-grade weapons. They were going to die. Emily moved to her research terminal and started pulling up files. Then we need to even the odds. What are you doing? Thinking like a scientist instead of soldier. She transferred data to her personal pad. You've been protecting me all this time while handicapped. Now it's my turn to help. She grabbed an emergency kit from under her bed and stuffed the data pad inside. Then she pulled out several sealed containers from her research samples. My work on Kepler, 442. I've been studying the ecosystem there for 8 months. I know things about alien biology that might help us. Marcus wanted to argue, to tell her to hide while he fought, but he could see the determination in her eyes. And honestly, he was terrified enough that he'd take any advantage they could get. They left their quarters and headed for the maintenance tunnels. These were narrow passages that ran throughout the station, used by repair crews to access critical systems. Most station residents didn't even know they existed, but Marcus had memorized the entire layout during his first week on the station. The tunnels were tight. Marcus had to stay within 5 feet of Emily just to navigate the cramped space. His augmentations flickered and died the moment they entered. Suddenly, he was moving through the dark with just a dim emergency lighting to guide him. His enhanced vision was gone. His threat detection was gone. His tactical overlay showing enemy positions was gone. He was blind and vulnerable in a way that made his skin crawl. They moved as quietly as possible through the tunnels. Marcus led the way, his basic military training guiding him. He'd been a soldier before the augmentations, had learned to fight and survive without computer assistance. Those skills were coming back now, rusty but still there. Behind him, Emily was checking her data pad, cross-referencing something. The Krell have an incredibly sensitive olfactory system, she whispered. They hunt by scent. That's probably how they're tracking people through the station. Marcus processed that information. Can we use that against them? Emily smiled in the darkness. It was a scary smile, the kind scientists get when they're about to do something radical. Oh, yes. She pulled out one of her sample containers. Inside was a collection of pollen from a plant species on Kepler 442. This produces a pheromone that triggers aggression in most carbon-based life forms. I've been studying it for months. The effect on Krell biology should be extreme. They found an air circulation junction, and Emily carefully released the pollen into the ventilation system. Within minutes, they could hear sounds echoing through the station. Roaring, fighting. The Krell teams were turning on each other, their careful coordination destroyed by chemically induced rage. That's 3 teams down, Marcus said, listening to the chaos. But there are still plenty more. They kept moving through the tunnels. Marcus's augmentation stayed offline, but his tactical mind was working overtime. He was thinking through every angle, every possibility. The narrow tunnels were actually an advantage. They limited how many enemies could attack at once. And Emily's biological knowledge was proving more useful than any weapon. At the next junction, they encountered 2 Draxian mercenaries. The aliens were huge, nearly 7 feet tall, with armored skin and claws that could tear through metal. Normally, Marcus's augmented reflexes would have let him take them both down in seconds. Now he was just a man with a knife. The fight was brutal and terrifying. Marcus moved on pure instinct and decades of combat training. He dodged the first Draxian's claws by inches, felt the wind of the strike pass his face, rolled under the second one's grab, came up with his knife and buried it in the joint of the first alien's armor. The Draxian screamed and swung wildly. Marcus barely got his arm up in time to block. The impact sent him crashing into the tunnel wall. Pain exploded through his shoulder. Without his augmented healing, that was going to leave a serious bruise. Emily was shouting something, but Marcus couldn't hear over the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He was afraid, actually genuinely terrified. For 8 years, the augmentations had made him feel invincible. Now he was mortal again, and mortality meant he could die. Emily could die. The second Draxian lunged at Emily. Marcus threw himself between them without thinking, taking a set of claws across his ribs. He felt skin tear, felt blood start soaking his shirt, but he managed to grapple the alien, using leverage and technique instead of augmented strength. Emily had grabbed something from her kit. She sprayed it directly into the Draxian's face. The alien recoiled, making a horrible choking sound. Bioluminescent bacteria, Emily said quickly, overloads their visual cortex. They're effectively blind now. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He took down both Draxians while they were disoriented, using brutal efficiency instead of enhanced speed. When it was over, he was breathing hard, bleeding from multiple cuts, and shaking slightly from adrenaline. Emily checked his wounds with practiced hands. "You're hurt. I'll live. Keep moving." They continued through the tunnels, and Emily kept finding ways to turn her research into weapons. She used fungal spores to create tracking markers, spreading them in patterns that would stick to the assassin's boots and show Marcus exactly where they'd been. She triggered chemical reactions in the station's water recycling system that created noxious fumes in specific sections, driving the hunters into choke points where Marcus could ambush them. And Marcus fought, without augmentations, without computer assistance, without any of the enhancements that had made him special. He fought with knives and improvised weapons, and his bare hands when necessary. He fought scared and desperate and human. They took down team after team. Marcus got cut, burned, bruised. His body was accumulating damage that his augmented healing would have shrugged off in minutes, but now would take weeks to properly heal. Every fight was harder than the last because he was getting tired and hurt and slower. But they kept surviving, kept adapting. Emily's scientific mind and Marcus's tactical experience created a partnership that was somehow more effective than his augmentations had ever been. The final team cornered them near the station's main power core. 6 Krell warriors, all heavily armed, all professional killers. They'd been holding back, saving themselves for this moment. Marcus was exhausted, bleeding from a dozen wounds, barely able to stand. Emily looked at him, then at the approaching Krell. Ideas, Marcus thought frantically. 6 against 1, and he was already half dead. His augmentations were still offline because Emily was right beside him. This was it. They were out of options. Then Emily did something that made his heart stop. She stepped forward, putting herself between Marcus and the Krell. "You want me? Here I am." The Krell leader raised his weapon, aiming at Emily's head, and Marcus felt something break open inside him. Not his augmentations. Something deeper. Something human. He didn't think. Didn't plan. Just moved. The fight that followed was pure chaos. Marcus fought like a cornered animal, using everything he had. No enhanced reflexes to guide him. No tactical computer to show him optimal strike points. Just raw human determination and the absolute refusal to let Emily die. He took down 3 Krell before one of them managed to shoot him. The plasma bolt hit his leg, and he went down hard. Pain exploded through his entire body. He looked up and saw the Krell leader standing over Emily, weapon raised. Marcus tried to get up, but his leg wouldn't support him. He was going to watch her die, and there was nothing he could do about it. Then station security burst through the doors, weapons firing. Peterson and his team had finally fought their way through the chaos. The remaining Krell went down in a hail of gunfire. It was over. Marcus collapsed, his vision going dark around the edges. He felt Emily's hands on his face, heard her voice calling his name, and in that moment, covered in blood and barely conscious, Marcus finally understood something important. Some things were worth being vulnerable for, worth being human for, worth giving up invincibility for. Emily was one of those things. Marcus spent 2 weeks in the station's medical facility recovering from his injuries. The plasma burn on his leg was serious, and without his augmented healing, his body had to repair itself the old-fashioned way, Slowly, painfully, Emily visited him every day, bringing research papers to read and terrible jokes to keep his spirits up. The station was cleaning up the aftermath of the attack. 23 assassins had been killed or captured. The fake contamination event had been exposed. And most importantly, Emily's research had been transmitted to every major human colony and government agency in the sector. The Kovac Syndicate's illegal mining operation was finished. Authorities were already raiding their facilities on Kepler 442. The people who tried to kill Emily were either dead or facing life in prison. She was safe now. Marcus should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt oddly empty, like something was ending that he wasn't ready to let go of. On his 10th day in medical, he had a visitor he wasn't expecting. Admiral Catherine Hayes appeared at his bedside, her military uniform crisp and formal. She was one of the high-ranking officers who oversaw the augmentation program. Marcus Davis, she said, pulling up a chair. "You look terrible." "Thank you, ma'am. I try." Hayes didn't smile. She pulled out a data pad and set it on his bed. "I've read the reports from Station 7. The attack, the injuries, all of it. Your performance was concerning." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "I neutralized the threat, ma'am. Dr. Brooks is alive." "Barely. And you nearly died in the process." Hayes tapped the data pad. "Your augmentations failed multiple times during the incident. That is a serious malfunction that needs to be addressed." "It's not a malfunction," Marcus said quietly. "It's a known issue with the system. It's in my file." "I know. I helped write that file." Hayes leaned forward. "The aesthetic response flaw. We thought it was theoretical. A 1-in-a-million edge case that would never actually matter in the field. Turns out it matters." Hayes was quiet for a moment, studying him with sharp eyes. "The research division has developed a fix. A neural patch that would suppress your aesthetic response centers entirely. You'd still have all your combat capabilities, all your tactical processing power, but you'd be immune to the flaw, unable to be compromised by beauty, by art, by emotional response." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "You want to remove my ability to feel things." "I want to remove your vulnerability," Hayes corrected. "Make you the soldier you were designed to be. The perfect weapon with no compromises and no weaknesses." She activated the data pad, showing him technical specifications. Neural pathways that would be severed. Brain regions that would be dampened. It was all very precise and scientific, and completely horrifying. "The procedure is voluntary," Hayes continued, "but the military strongly recommends it. You're too valuable an asset to leave compromised. With this patch, you could return to active duty. Continue serving humanity the way you were meant to." Marcus looked at the specifications on the screen. He understood what they were really offering him. A chance to go back to being invincible. To never feel fear again. Never feel vulnerable. Never have his combat systems crash at the worst possible moment. Never feel the way he felt when he looked at Emily. "How long do I have to decide?" he asked. 72 hours. "Then we need an answer." Hayes stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Davis, you did good work here. Unconventional, but effective. That partnership you developed with Dr. Brooks, using cognitive enhancement when combat systems failed. The research division found it fascinating." When she was gone, Marcus stared at the data pad for a long time. The patch would solve all his problems. He could go back to being the soldier everyone needed him to be. No more complications. No more weakness. No more humanity. Emily came by that evening like always. She brought dinner from the station cafeteria and settled into the chair beside his bed. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Marcus finally spoke. "The military wants to fix me." Emily looked up sharply. "Fix what?" He explained about Admiral Hayes' visit, about the neural patch, about the choice he had to make. Emily listened without interrupting, her food forgotten. "So they want to lobotomize the parts of your brain that make you human," she said when he finished. Her voice was carefully neutral, but Marcus could hear the anger underneath. "They want to make me effective again." "You were effective. We stopped every attack. We survived." "Barely," Marcus said. I almost got you killed a dozen times because my augmentations kept failing. Emily set down her food and looked at him directly. Marcus, can I tell you what I think happened with your augmentations? Sure. I don't think they malfunctioned. I think they evolved. She pulled out her own datapad, showing him research notes she'd been compiling. I've been studying your case for weeks now. The way your combat systems redistribute processing power when they shut down. The cognitive enhancement you experience. It's not a flaw. It's adaptation. Marcus frowned. I don't follow. Emily's scientist mode was fully engaged now, her hands gesturing as she explained. Your augmentations are connected to every part of your brain, right? They're designed to make you a better soldier. But being a soldier isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to fight, why to fight, what you're fighting for. She pulled up neural scans on her pad. When you experience beauty, when you feel genuine connection to something, your brain is telling you this matters. And your augmentations respond by redirecting resources toward understanding and protecting what matters. They make you smarter, more strategic, more human. The military doesn't want me more human, Marcus said. They want me more effective. Those aren't opposites. Emily leaned forward, her eyes intense. Marcus, do you know what made us survive that attack? It wasn't your combat systems. It was the fact that you were fighting for something you cared about. You were vulnerable and afraid, and fighting anyway. That's not weakness. That's the most human thing possible. Marcus felt something tight in his chest. Emily, I can't protect you if my systems fail every time I look at you. I don't need you to protect me anymore, Emily said gently. My research is published. The syndicate is destroyed. The threat is over. She stood up, gathering her things. You have a choice to make, and I'm not going to influence it. But I want you to know something first. What? The augmentations didn't malfunction when you saw me. They recognized something worth being vulnerable for, worth being human for. She paused at the door. The question you need to answer isn't whether you want to be an effective soldier. It's whether you want to be a person. After she left, Marcus lay in the medical bed thinking about everything. About 8 years of being humanity's perfect weapon. About fights he'd won without even trying because the augmentations did all the work. About how empty it felt, watching his body move while he was just a passenger. Then he thought about the past few weeks. Fighting scared. Fighting hurt. Fighting because he chose to, not because computers told him to. Coming up with strategies with Emily, using his brain instead of just his reflexes. Feeling fear and hope and anger and joy. Feeling human. 3 days later, Admiral Hayes returned for his answer. Marcus was sitting up in bed, his leg healing enough that he could walk with assistance. I've made my decision, he told her. Hayes pulled out her datapad, ready to schedule the neural patch procedure. Good. When do you want to? I want the augmentations removed. All of them. Hayes froze. What? Complete removal. I know it's possible. I've read the medical literature. It's risky and it's permanent, but it can be done. Davis, you can't be serious. Those augmentations make you who you are. No, Marcus said firmly. They make me what the military wanted me to be. That's not the same thing. Hayes stared at him for a long moment. You understand what you're giving up? You'll be just a regular soldier. No enhanced reflexes. No tactical computer. No edge over the enemy. You'll be ordinary. Marcus thought about Emily's smile, about fighting through maintenance tunnels, bleeding and afraid and human, about choosing to protect someone not because orders said to, but because he cared. Maybe ordinary is enough, he said. The removal procedure took 6 hours. The surgeons were careful, extracting the neural implants without causing permanent damage. When Marcus woke up, his head felt strange. Quiet. No tactical displays. No threat assessments. No constant stream of data flowing through his consciousness. Just his own thoughts. His own perceptions. His own very human brain. Emily was waiting when they released him from medical. She didn't say anything, just smiled that smile that had crashed his combat systems the first time he saw her. It didn't crash anything now, because there was nothing to crash. But Marcus felt his heart speed up anyway, entirely on its own. How do you feel? She asked. Vulnerable, Marcus admitted. Mortal. Kind of terrified, actually. Welcome to being human. They walked through the station together, and Marcus noticed things he'd never paid attention to before. The way light reflected off the observation windows. The sound of people laughing in the marketplace. The feeling of Emily's hand in his. Without the augmentations filtering everything through tactical assessments and threat matrices, the world was bigger and stranger and more beautiful than he'd ever realized. The military offered Marcus an honorable discharge. They weren't interested in a soldier without augmentations, especially one who'd voluntarily given them up. But several frontier academies reached out, offering teaching positions. They wanted someone who could train the next generation of soldiers, someone who understood both augmented and conventional combat. Marcus accepted a position at the Academy on Station 7, teaching tactical strategy and combat theory, helping young soldiers understand that being effective wasn't about having the best technology or the fastest reflexes. It was about knowing what you were fighting for. Emily continued her research, cataloging alien ecosystems and publishing papers that help humanity understand the strange new galaxy they were expanding into. And every evening, Marcus would come home to their shared quarters and find her at her desk, surrounded by research notes and samples, completely absorbed in her work. She was still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, but now he could appreciate it without his brain shutting down, could feel it without computers getting in the way, could love her as a human being, vulnerable and mortal and entirely by choice. The galaxy was still vast and dangerous. Humanity was still the newest species in a cosmos full of ancient civilizations that looked down on them. There were still wars to fight, threats to face, challenges that seemed impossible. But Marcus had learned something important during those weeks of fighting for Emily's life. The most human thing about humanity wasn't their capacity for violence or their clever technology or their ability to survive impossible odds. It was their capacity to choose. To look at all the safe, easy options and pick the harder path because it meant something. To choose connection over isolation, vulnerability over invincibility, love over programming. Every morning, Marcus woke up ordinary. No augmentations, no enhancements. Just a man who'd chosen to be human in all the messy, complicated, beautiful ways that meant. And every morning, he chose it again. That he'd finally learned was what real strength looked like.